All right, buckle up everyone, because we are diving headfirst into some serious legal drama. Two major federal cases against Donald Trump just got dismissed, and we're talking about the election interference and classified documents cases.
It's certainly raising eyebrows, the timing of it all, right on the heels of Trump winning the 2024 election against Kamala Harris.
Oh yeah, that's a point this is happening while he's president-elect. So we got a lot to untangle here and a ton of sources too. We're talking Salon, MSNBC, even Al Jazeera. They've all got something to say.
Yeah.
France 24, The Daily Express, Axios. We're really getting the full picture here.
A lot of folks are probably wondering, how can cases just get dropped like that? Especially with such serious accusations. Well, it comes down to this Department of Justice policy, a long-standing one, that a sitting president, well, can't be indicted, can't be prosecuted.
Hold on, they can't be prosecuted at all. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, it gets a bit complicated. The DOJ's interpretation of the Constitution basically says that indicting a sitting president could really mess with their ability to, govern effectively. This policy has been around since the 70s, but it's definitely causing a stir right now.
So special counsel Jack Smith, he's the one who filed to dismiss both cases.
That's right. And Judge Tanya Chutkan has already granted the motion to dismiss the election interference case.
But the classified documents case is still waiting for a decision.
That's right.
Okay, so let's take a closer look at these cases one by one. First, the election subversion case. What exactly was Trump accused of?
Well, remember all the stuff leading up to January 6th and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results?
Oh, yeah.
That's what this case was all about. He was facing 4 felony charges.
Whoa, 4 felony charges. And what about the classified documents case? What was that all about?
That one involved 37 felony charges.
37? Wow, that's a lot.
And it all stemmed from how Trump handled classified documents after leaving the White House back in 21.
Okay, so for now, he's in the clear on those federal charges.
Right.
But our sources mentioned Trump's also got 2 state criminal cases going on, one in New York, one in Georgia. What's happening with those?
Ah, those state cases. That's where things get really interesting. See, this whole presidential immunity thing only applies at the federal level. State charges are a different story.
Hold up. He can be prosecuted for state crimes, but not federal ones while in office. Why is that?
It's all about jurisdiction and the balance of power between states and the feds. Each state, they've got their own legal system, and they have the power to prosecute crimes that happen within their borders. Presidential immunity, at least as the DOJ sees it, only shields the president from federal prosecution. Historically, it was seen as a way to protect the president from politically driven charges from individual states that could get in the way of them, governing the whole country.
Makes sense. So that's why those state cases are still on the table. Can you remind us what those cases are about?
Sure. The New York one actually already led to a conviction back in May. Trump was found guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records, all tied to those hush money payments to Stormy Daniels.
Oh, right. That whole saga. So he was convicted, but he hasn't been sentenced.
Exactly. Sentencing's been postponed, probably because of all this other legal stuff going on.
Makes sense. And the Georgia case, what's the latest on that one?
Still in a bit of legal limbo right now. It's all about his alleged attempts to mess with the election results in Georgia back in 2020.
So even with the federal dismissals, Trump's still facing serious legal challenges. What are people saying about all of this? It must be a pretty mixed bag.
You said it. Reactions are pretty much what you'd expect, I guess. Trump and his team are claiming victory, naturally. They're calling the dismissals a win for the rule of law. And they're still sticking to their guns, saying the cases were nothing but a political witch hunt. Empty and lawless. That's what they're saying.
They're framing this as a win for them.
Oh, absolutely. But on the other side of the aisle, you've got special counsel Smith's team pushing back. They're basically saying, look, this isn't about the merits of the case. We had to dismiss purely because of DOJ policy. We still believe we've got a strong case.
So they aren't saying Trump did nothing wrong.
Exactly. And then you've got all the legal experts chiming in with their opinions, lots of speculation flying around. Could these cases come back after Trump leaves office? What are the legal hurdles? What would the implications be? It's a real mess.
The big question, isn't it? What happens if a president can just avoid consequences for their actions while in office? It makes you wonder about accountability and the balance of power.
You hit the nail on the head. This whole situation is fascinating, really. It raises fundamental questions about, presidential power and whether the justice system can be, swayed by politics.
Yeah, we're getting into some deep stuff here, and we're just getting started. We've only just begun to scratch the surface. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. to dive even deeper into the potential implications of all of this. For Trump, for the presidency, for all of us.
Yeah, this whole situation goes way beyond just Donald Trump. It's like a window into how presidential power and accountability work or don't work in a democracy.
I like that, a window. So where do we even start unpacking something this big?
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? These cases coming back to bite Trump after he leaves office. Even though Smith dropped the federal charges, he didn't do it with prejudice.
Wait, with prejudice, what does that even mean?
Oh, it's a legal term. Basically means the cases could be refiled, down the line. It's like leaving the door open, just in case.
So there's a chance these cases could come back.
It's definitely possible. But it's a real gray area, legally speaking. Lots of debate about whether going after a former president for things they did in office would be, vindictive or politically motivated, especially if it's a new administration doing the pushing.
So it's like, on the one hand, a president could escape consequences for doing something wrong, but on the other, it could turn into a political witch hunt after they leave. That's a tough one.
Yeah, right. And it makes us think about some really fundamental questions, like, does going after Trump in this case undermine the whole idea of presidential power? Or by not going after him, are we setting a bad example and making people lose trust in the justice system? Legal scholars have been arguing about this stuff for decades.
Wow, so these Trump cases are bringing these age-old debates to the surface. What a mess.
Well, it's more than just a mess, really. It reminds us that the legal world and the political world, they're totally intertwined. And the decisions made today, well, they have consequences that'll shape American democracy for years to come. It's not just a courtroom drama, it's about the soul of the country.
Okay, that got deep fast. And to make things even more complicated, our sources say that Smith's team is planning to resign before Trump takes office in January.
That's interesting, isn't it? Trump has said he wants to fire Smith, so it seems like they're trying to, avoid that whole spectacle.
It definitely shows how tense things are around these cases.
Yeah.
And it raises the question, what will the new administration do about the investigations into Trump? Will they get a new special counsel? Will they try to sweep it all under the rug?
Those are big questions with huge consequences, not just for Trump, but for American politics as a whole, and for those ideas of accountability and integrity in our institutions,
So this deep dive has taken us from legal details to the heart of American democracy. We've got a lot to think about. Maybe for our listeners who are feeling a little lost, we should zoom out for a second and recap what we've learned.
Good idea. We started with those two big federal cases against Trump that got dismissed. One about election interference and the other about classified documents. They were dismissed because of this DOJ policy that a sitting president can't be indicted.
Right. And we talked about how that policy is based on how the DOJ interprets the Constitution and what could happen if presidents could be indicted while in office.
Yeah, and then we got into how Trump still has those two state criminal cases going on. They aren't affected by presidential immunity. One in New York, where he's already been convicted, and one in Georgia that's still up in the air.
We also talked about the reactions to the federal dismissals, with Trump claiming victory and Smith's team saying they still have a strong case. And then we got into the really big questions.
The big ones, yeah. Could those cases be revived after Trump leaves office? What does all this mean for presidents being held accountable going forward? Does the system we have now strike the right balance between protecting the president and making sure justice is served?
So many questions, so little time. But that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? We get to wrestle with these big, complicated issues in the world and think critically.
Exactly. And that brings us to the most important part of this whole thing. What does all this mean for you?
I know we've thrown a lot at you today. Legal battles, constitutional debates, political maneuvering. It can feel like a lot,
Definitely a lot to digest. But it's crucial to remember this isn't just some abstract legal stuff happening way out there. This stuff has real consequences, real-world implications for everyone. What happens with these cases, these debates about presidential immunity, it all shapes the very fabric of, well, our democracy.
So where can our listeners go from here? What can they do to learn more? Any resources you recommend?
Absolutely. There's tons of information out there. Start with the big names, the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. They've all got in-depth coverage of all this legal and political stuff.
Don't forget those legal blogs and journals, too. They can get really deep into the weeds, offer some really insightful analysis.
Oh, yeah. Those are great for a deeper dive. And if you're more of a visual learner, documentaries, news programs, they can be really helpful, too. Give you different perspectives on the issues.
The key is to be a smart consumer of information, right? Check multiple sources, consider different viewpoints. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's it. Critical thinking is your best friend in a world full of information overload. You're not just soaking it all in, you're engaging with it, forming your own opinions, adding your voice to the conversation about what kind of democracy we want to have.
So it's not just about reading the news, it's about really digging in and thinking it through.
Exactly. And that engagement, you can take so many forms. Talking with friends and family, joining online forums, community groups, even contacting your representatives to let them know what you think.
Taking what you've learned and putting it into action, making your voice heard.
That's what it's all about. The future of our democracy depends on engaged citizens, people who are informed, who think critically, and who participate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into these Trump cases and all the twists and turns, we want to leave you with something to think about, something to spark your own exploration.
This whole saga keeps bringing up one fundamental question. Does the way we do presidential immunity right now, does it really strike the right balance? Does it protect the office of the president without letting them get away with things they shouldn't?
That's a tough one.
It is, but it's a question worth asking. Think about what could happen if things stay the same. Are there other ways to handle these issues? It's something for all of us to consider.
As you learn more about these cases, about presidential power, about accountability and immunity, keep that question in mind. What do you think is the right approach?
Keep learning, keep questioning, keep those conversations going. Our democracy depends on it.
Well said. Our deep dive might be ending here, but your journey of discovery is just beginning. Go out there, do your research, challenge your assumptions, and most importantly, make your voice heard. Until next time.